Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start out with Donald Stookey, who died recently at the age of 99. And by way of introduction, I just want to play a little bit of this.
When a product has been around for over half a century, you just know they're doing something right. Corning Ware can proudly say it's been a part of millions of meals and happy memories and is still growing strong. Over the past 50 years, the signature patterns, shapes, and styles have graced millions of tables, adding a touch of everyday elegance everywhere they go.
Donald Stookey was the chemist working for Corning Glass who discovered Corning Ware, and we can only guess how many millions of casseroles and dishes have been served in Corning Ware through the years, and along with that, how many instances of broken glass have been avoided. But it was also a strong enough material to make up the nose cone of missiles. But like so many other discoveries, it was sort of an accident. Here's the AP description of how Stookey discovered glass ceramics in 1952. He was a young scientist researching the properties of glass when he put a glass plate into an oven to heat it, but the oven malfunctioned. Instead of heating to about 1100 degrees Fahrenheit, the oven shot up to more than 1600 degrees Fahrenheit. Stookey expected to find a molten mass. Instead, he found an opaque, milky white plate. As he was removing it from the oven, his tongs slipped and the plate fell to the floor, but instead of shattering, it bounced. So he basically created a glass product that was as strong as steel, and Corning patented it in 1957. The New York Times had the temperature says it was supposed to heat it to 600, and it turned out it was 900. So if someone's a chemist out there, they can clarify that for me. Anyway, Stookey went on to win the National Medal of Technology from President Reagan in 1986, and in 2010 he was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. But in a story that's familiar to so many of the inventors we do on this show, his son told the AP that he believes his father made money on the percentage of the sales, but he never got rich. We're going to move on now to Richard Schaal, who died recently at the age of 86. This was a guy, I have to admit, that I was quite jealous of for a while. Richard Schaal was one of the fine members of the great Second City troops of the early 1960s here in Chicago. His specialty was physical comedy. Most of the other Second City members at the time were on the dialogue side, and Bernie Solins, who we've done a podcast on, and Sheldon Patinkin needed a guy who could do physical improv, and so they noticed Richard Schaal at a little improv in Chicago Heights and picked him up for Second City, and he became one of the legendary members of Second City. He won a Lifetime Award in 2010. He was a good comic actor. Besides that, he had a role in the 1966 Alan Arkin Carl Reiner movie, The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, very funny movie. And he was a stock character in a lot of the CBS comedies of the early 1970s, including The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Rhoda, and Bob Newhart. He was especially good as a loopy poet who was the boyfriend of Bob's secretary, Carol Kester, played by Marsha Wallace, whose podcast we've also done. None of that's why I'm jealous of him. I mentioned that he had an occasional role on the sitcom Rhoda. Well, besides that, he was married to Rhoda in real life. He was married to Valerie Harper, and I have to admit at the time I had a crush on her. And she and Dick Schaal were married for 13 years. Here in his 2010 Lifetime Award from Second City, he talks about how he met Valerie Harper around 1964.
When I first went into the Second City, after being there for a couple of years, Viola said, "You know that there are 32 marriages that have come out of Second City?" And I realized then that it's a community. This is not a diversion. It's a community. I was probably in the 33rd marriage in the Second City. That took place in New York, when Arlene Galanka, who was in the show at the time, said she had a girlfriend who was beautiful on the inside and beautiful on the outside, and would I like to meet her? I thought maybe it was a ruse to get a free ticket. Well, anyway, we got going together, and I found we'd been studying acting for 6 years with Mary Tarsai in New York. So I put her in a workshop, and we started working it out, and when the Toronto opening came up, I got her in the show. She was on stage with Linda Lavin and came off all flushed. She said, "I got it. My God, I just got it." All the time, and through Second City's training, from our experiences in improvisational theater, in creativity, just bang, 100% educated, all at one time. I'm just amazed that I'm getting an award. But Fred Allen once said, "If you stand around Broadway long enough, they'll build a theater around you."
Well, what we don't know is how many divorces came out of Second City, and all good things come to an end. And here Valerie Harper talks in a 1978 CBC interview about the dissolution of her marriage to Richard Schaal, but by then it was too late for me anyway.
I've been in a state of massive change the last, 6 months, and it included a 13-year marriage that I can't even say that it's ended because Richard and I are very close. It's not like when you say ended or we split or it's over. Those are all such kind of almost unpleasant things. What we did, Richard and I, was retain our friendship and terminate the marriage part of the relationship. But I see him all the time. We communicate. We're better friends and get along better since we are not married anymore. What we found was we did not really have a total marriage. And you may just love your best friend, but you don't want to live with them. We assessed what we had and what we wanted to do with our lives and where we wanted to go and made this particular decision. And there were no children involved, so I think that took a lot of strain off of it. And Richard's beautiful, and I feel his support and love almost more than when we kind of had to be together. Do you know what I mean? Now, when we see each other, it's by absolute choice, and he's terrific.
We're going to move on now to another half of a famous duo, Tom Magliozzi, who died recently at the age of 77, and he was one half of the Click and Clap, the Tappet brothers. I'm not sure if he was Click or Clack. Along with his brother Ray, they hosted NPR's Car Talk, my favorite show on public radio, perhaps the most non-political show on public radio. And for almost 25 years, they gave advice on cars, told jokes, dispensed advice, and generally had a good time. Here is NPR on the death of Tom Magliozzi, one of the hosts of Car Talk.
One of public radio's most popular personalities, and a great guy, Tom Magliozzi, has died. Tom and his brother Ray became famous as Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers, on the weekly NPR show Car Talk. They bantered, told jokes, laughed, and sometimes even gave pretty good advice to listeners who called in with their car troubles. Tom Magliozzi died this morning of complications from Alzheimer's. He was 77 years old. NPR's Lynn Neary has this remembrance.
If there was one thing that defined Tom Magliozzi more than anything, it was his laugh. It was loud, it was constant, it was infectious.
His laugh is the working definition of infectious laughter.
Doug Berman has been the producer of Car Talk since 1987. He remembers the first time he ever encountered Tom Magliozzi.
Before I ever met him, I heard him, and it wasn't on the air. It was, I'd be working in the station. I was the news director at the time, and I'd just hear this laughter, and then there'd be more of it, and people would sort of gather around him. He was just kind of a magnet.
The Magliozzi brothers grew up in a tough neighborhood of East Cambridge in a close-knit Italian family. Tom was 12 years older, the beloved older brother to Ray. They liked to act like they were just a couple of regular guys who happened to be mechanics, but both of them graduated from MIT. After getting out of college, Tom went to work as an engineer. One day he had a kind of epiphany as he told graduates when he and Ray gave the 1999 commencement address at their alma mater. He was on his way to work when he had a near-fatal accident with a tractor-trailer. He pulled off the road and decided to do something different with his life.
I quit my job. I became a bum. I spent 2 years sitting in Harvard Square drinking coffee. I invented the concept of the do-it-yourself auto repair shop, and I met my lovely wife.
Well, he wasn't exactly a bum. He worked as a consultant and college professor, eventually getting his Ph.D. in marketing. And Tom and Ray did open that do-it-yourself repair shop in the early 70s. Later, they opened a more traditional car repair shop called the Good News Garage. They got into radio by accident when someone from the local public radio station, WBUR, was putting together a panel of car mechanics for a talk show.
You know, they called Ray, and Ray thought it was a dumb idea, so he said, I'll send my brother. And Tom thought, great, I'll get out of, breaking my knuckles for a couple hours. And he went over, and he was the only one who showed up.
Doug Berman says the station liked what Tom did and asked him to come back the next week. This time, he brought Ray. The rest, as they say, is history. In 1987, Car Talk went national on NPR.
Hello and welcome to Car Talk on National Public Radio with us, Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers, and we're broadcasting this week from the observation deck here at Car Talk Plaza.
The Magliozzi brothers were a huge success. Listeners loved their blend of humor, passion, expertise, and just plain silliness.
Well, this is the only theory of which I am sure in the entire world. I don't know whether the Earth goes around the sun or vice versa. I don't know about electromagnetism, but I do know that it never pays to buy a new car.
Don't know much about biology.
Oh, God. Hey, aren't you glad you called?
When it came to cars, Berman says the brothers really did know what they were talking about. But he says that's not why people listen to the show.
I think it has very little to do with cars. It's the guys' personalities. It's, and Tom especially, really a genius with a great facile mind. He's mischievous. He likes to prod people into honesty.
Berman remembers the time a woman called in because she had failed to pay a toll on a bridge and was worried about getting caught. Tom had the idea of calling the person in charge of the bridge. The ensuing conversation is hilarious.
Why do you have to have a coins-only lane?
Well, we do have some to service patrons who have a commutation sticker on their window.
I don't think they're marked very well, Don, because I didn't see it until the last minute.
Well, feisty for a lawbreaker, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, hey, Gail.
Yes.
Cool it, we're going to give me a name.
Yes, right.
And by the way, Gail, there is no statute of limitations on this. We can find you when we're here.
It is almost impossible to talk about Tom Magliozzi without talking about Ray. Berman says the affection you heard on the radio dated back to their childhood, and it was real.
For Ray, he idolized Tom. This was, this is the guy who sort of introduced him to everything in life. And Tom liked having his little brother around. He liked the guy. And so when they grew up, they were really, really great friends.
Tom and Ray have not done the show live for 2 years. Car Talk has been airing archives of old shows, and Berman says Ray would like to continue doing that as a tribute to his brother.
Well, we're going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer, Sid Tepps. And in closing tonight, we're going to talk about Ricardo Gallardo, who died recently at the age of 93. Ricardo Gallardo is better known as Manitas de Plata, which is what he changed his name to. Manitas de Plata is Little Hands of Silver, and he was among the greatest flamenco guitarists in the world. He was born in an itinerant family. He never went to school. He picked up the guitar when he was 9 years old, and he was largely self-taught. As a teenager, he started playing in southern France and in Spain along the Riviera. In the 1950s and 60s, the Riviera was the place to be for all the beautiful people, and they picked up on his virtuoso guitar playing and his good looks, and he became a superstar of the flamenco guitar on the Riviera. His fans included Brigitte Bardot, Salvador Dali, and Picasso. Eventually, he overcame his fear of flying, and he flew to the United States. He played at Carnegie Hall, and he sold close to 100 million records in his career. He made a lot of money, but he needed it because he had a penchant for women, gambling, and fast cars, and he blew most of the money he made during his lifetime. I think he had close to 30 children from different mothers. So Manitas de Plata was a real character, but he certainly could play that flamenco guitar. And we're going to close tonight with a little bit of Por el Camino de Ronda. I think this may be the first time we've ever closed with flamenco guitar, but this is a good person to close with, Manitas de Plata.